Well, welcome to my podcast. I am super excited to share everyone a fun conversation today. Now, can you tell people who you are and a little bit about you?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question, but I'm Dara
Right?
Noble. So happy to be reconnected with you, Sean. I love how our paths have crossed magically and synchronistically. I am many things, but I'd say, right now, what I most closely identify with is I'm a social media alchemist. I've been working in the industry for, over a decade. I know I'm pretty much as old as like the social media industry has been a job, is how long I've been working in it. But I'm also a certified life coach. I'm also a sound healing practitioner, and I'm also a breathwork facilitator. So I've definitely been making some moves into the healing arts in my own healing journey over these last 6 years.
That's awesome. Well, I love that you bring up alchemy because do you know, like people are always asking me where I get, because I do these little daily reels that are just my little tidbits of life. Do you know where I get most of my topics? T-shirts. I will
really?
be driving around town and everyone in Vietnam rides motorcycles. And so there will be these random T-shirts. And as I'll pull up to a stoplight and I look up and it's like, live and let live. And I'm just like, that's a good one. Or choose the people who choose you was what I saw when I was driving home. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And like,
well, and what I would also say to that is like, it's a message for you too. Like it's those synchronistic messages that just kind of, it's like a little like wink, from the universe too, is my perspective.
Right.
But also inspo.
Yeah. And I love the idea of as well, like I loved reading about Carl Jung when I was younger in university, and the idea of synchronicity, this dance. And for me, it really became evident when I met my wife. I was sitting at home and I had this feeling that I needed to go somewhere. And I was like, well, where am I going? What am I doing? And I just was like, and it was like this string was pulling me out of my house. And I was like, all right, let's go. And I just started walking and I went. And then I ended up at this place, this recording studio where my friend was at. I was like, yeah, let's go see Justin. And I went to see him. And then the dude sat in the hallway and smoked a cigar and had a phone call and just left me hanging. And he's like, just wait for me. It's going to be a couple minutes. And so I go and I'm less like, I don't have anything to do. And I hear this beautiful music coming from this room. And I pop into the room and there's my wife. And then I didn't have the guts to talk to her that night. And it was like, I just was like, drop the ball. I was like, wow, you're amazing. That's all I could say. And then she's like, thank you. And she left. And I was like, stupid child. You had the chance, man. And then I bumped into her a couple days later and we hit it off. And it was there was this, was it the Wedding Crashers? Luke.
Yeah.
He spills the drink on the girl at the wedding and then he starts trying to clean her. Same thing happened to me. And I spilled. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, this. And we had the worst first date ever. But then we both love dogs. And then one day I was like, you know what? We just didn't hit off. Would you like to come over and watch a movie and meet my puppy? Because my world revolves around my puppy, Emma. And she met my dog. And the second she met my dog, she's like, you can't be all bad because you have an awesome dog. And I was like, yay. But it was just like these little strings of magic that all kind of got pulled together. And I think people forget about that. Talk to me about your experience with synchronicity, with alchemy, with magic.
Yeah, no, I love that. And when I was reflecting, I just turned 41, I had my birthday. So I'm definitely in that reflective mode. And, it's this, I can remember my first experience with synchronicity. It's like you hear like 1111, like you'll see 1111 on the clock or, these repeating number patterns. And, I was just like, okay, that's way too woo-woo for me to really, like, this is like early on. And I remember I was living in DC and I was really unhappy with my job and I had only been there for a few months. And so I was like, you have to stick this out. Like you have moved down here, like you are all in. And I just remember I was like contemplating a lot at the time, soul searching. And in DC, it's a lot of like walking and, like commuting by walking around. And I started to notice that, like the crosswalk, every time I looked up, I had 11 seconds left to walk. And it was just, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Like, okay, 11. But it kept happening. And so anyway, like that was like the first thing of like, this is a weird coincidence that this 11 number keeps coming up. And so like fast forward, some magical stuff happened. I ended up like, the company ended up not existing. I was living social. So it was just like not a great company to be working for at that time. And I was very easily able to exit that situation. Stars aligned, and I was able to like move on with my life. And so that was the first time I started to pay attention to things like numbers. And that's just like one synchronicity. And so that's a lot of what I share with people of like, okay, is it sure, maybe it's 1111, maybe it's 333, maybe it's numbers, maybe it's a word, maybe it's a spirit animal, that like an animal, whether it's in nature or on a billboard. Those are the ways that the universe starts communicating with you. And that it's just like a muscle that you have to build of like, it's like this language that is unspoken that you start to, I don't know, connect with the universe and kind of figure out what the messages may signify. There's symbolism there. It could be a symbol or it could just be a message that you need. So the 1111 was the first that made it really visible and like brought to the surface. But I relate to your story about how you met your wife because it's also very similar for me around, how I met my now wife. At the time I was like straight and had a boyfriend. And there was just this urge, this like, you said it like a thread, but it was just like something in me was like, you have to go study abroad. You have to go to the Dominican Republic. And I had no money and I just put it on a credit card and I went, and I'll spare you the whole story, but she ended up being my roommate. And that was how I met my wife. And yeah, we had kind of like the similar, didn't go as planned at first, but it really just started to build over time. And it was just that simple listening to something and following the call and following the breadcrumbs, if you will.
I love that. I love that. There was this book I read that I believe the title of the book is Journey to the Center of the World or Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's not Jules Verne's, but it was this story. It was like the quest for Shambhala. I will find the title and send it to you, and I will pop the title up here when I edit this. But it essentially followed this guy, these explorers that were seeking out Shambhala. And it was this spiritual place that the Buddhists talked about, like this heaven on earth. And when they went there, one of the things that these men, these explorers, these scientists were actually journeying through the mountains of, I believe it was Nepal, and they were climbing to this one hill, and they got hopelessly lost. And they were just standing in the fog, and they were like, no idea where to go. They were just lost. And then suddenly an eagle flew overhead, holding a snake in its talons, and flew down the hill. And the guys looked at each other like, that was weird. Let's follow that. They walked down this hill. And as they got toward the bottom of the hill, there was a monastery. And one of the monks was walking out of the monastery up the hill to greet them. And like, they were like, what's going on, man? And he's like, well, we knew you were coming, so we wanted to come find you. And they walked down in, and they got inside the monastery. And there on the shrine was a giant Buddha. And next to it was the eagle god holding the snake in its talons. And they were just like, oh, man. And like that magic, that true magic that exists and flows through all things and manifests in different ways. And one of the things that's always been interesting to me, I trained as an intuitive, and so I don't always talk about that, but that's something that I have always done. And it's been a part of me, and it's something that I find is very much, when I deny it, my life doesn't go right. And when I pay attention to it, things fall into place. And there was one time that I was giving my wife a reading and looking at something for her, and she's like, what am I doing in my career, my life, and what is my journey? And I looked at something for her and I said, I see you going to pray at the statue of Mary in the center of Saigon. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But I see you being there, and I see you going and finding meaning. And we forgot about it. Lives get busy. We had our daughter, and life just kind of kept going. And then one day, months later, she looked at me and she's like, I feel like tonight I need to go to the statue and pray. I was like, okay, I will join you. We will go together. And we got there, and my wife has this one singer that is her mother's. This lady is probably the most iconic singer in Vietnamese history of the last at least 100 years. Her name is Gan Ly. She is iconic. She is like Celine Dion rolled into Whitney Houston. She is the, diva of that generation in the 1960s and 70s. And there she was, standing there praying a foot away, a couple feet away from my wife. My wife walked over to her and said, wow, my name is V, and I've always admired you. And it was interesting because at that moment, this person who was my wife's absolute idol turned to my wife and said, I've followed your career, and I've always been inspired by who you are and what you do. And this is what I believe is your vision. This is what I always have admired about you. And my wife was like, oh my goodness. It was this validation that no one else could have given it to her at the right moment in time. But she had to be willing to follow that magic, to embrace that moment, and to feel the pull of that string, wherever that string might pull us. And I love that story.
Well, and it's just like, I love the coming back to the word magic, because it's like, that's not a coincidence. Like there is some orchestration that, you can't explain that's happening. And yeah, I always hear, in my circles of spirituality, it's like, we've been taught to believe that magic is like fiction, that it's in a storybook or a movie. But it's like, once you start to believe in that magic does exist, that's when you are open to it. You're inviting the miracles. Like Marianne Williamson always calls it, like you start to believe in, bring in the miracles of life. And I think it took me a long time. Like I was very resistant to I was very anti-woo, okay, sure, you have crystals and you meditate with a golden light. I'm like, I'm trying to get healed here. And so, but it's like, once I finally was like, what, probably ayahuasca helped me with that. Like, wow, there is a whole unseen world that I was ignoring. But that's where the magic, I think, is kind of being threaded behind the scenes. So yeah, anyway, I love the use of magic and having people, I wish they would believe in it again.
Well, I love this whole unseen world thing. A couple of years ago, one of the phenomenon that I absolutely loved, and I think we're going to see more of it in this fun concept. I love augmented reality. And the game that I loved was, what was it? Pokemon Go, man. I love that game. I love that game because, first of all, it was really cool. One of the things I loved about that game is everyone was out walking. Everyone was going to the park. Everyone was getting outside. And everyone's step counts were up. If we could have more video games like that, the kids would be healthy. The world would be moving. And I would loved it for that. But what was really awesome was that it made really boring places interesting. It would pick these landmarks, and people would show up at this landmark, and there would be an energy there that called to people. And whatever that was, digital at this point. But how much more could there also be, little pools of energy in our own real world. There was a
Mm-hmm.
great Morgan Freeman narrated series called Through the Wormhole. And have you seen that series
I
before?
haven't. No.
Go watch it. It
Okay.
is amazing. And they look at these topics. And there was a scientific study that looked at the study of the ability to see the future. And
Mm.
scientists studied this, and they found that humans can perceive the future. And how the study worked was like this. So they had a computer that the people had to sit in front of, and the computer would show them different images. But what
Mm.
they did is they had these sensors on the people to measure stress responses. And what they found is before they showed people a scary image, like nanoseconds before, the people would react to the scary image before it was there. So there is
Huh.
something, whether they were picking up on the machine, whether there was like some
Yeah.
type of sensing of what was going to come on, but essentially, scientifically, they showed that we have this perception that is beyond what we know of. And that's rad to me. So
That's
rad.
so cool.
Magic
Well,
exists.
I love just like how like even like quantum physics, like that is coming to the surface, like that is starting to prove the unseen, and that like I mean we hear everything as energy, but like no, it literally is. So yeah, I just love that the science is finally catching up to it, because I know, there's a lot of people that try to be rational. Again, like that's why a lot of people don't believe in magic, because they're rational and they're trying to make it logical and trying to make sense of it
And
all.
yet, and yet everyone has those stories.
Yes,
Things that
yes.
they can't explain. I remember I studied Chinese medicine and acupuncture. That was before I moved back to Asia. I did my master's in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I literally have like 6 months left. I finished my degree. But I got to the
Cool.
point where I just was like, I wanted to see it. And I didn't think that
Mm,
any of my professors got it. And I'm
yeah.
not judging them. And I moved here and I still haven't met people who've really gotten it, because
Mhm.
I feel like there's something there that like the ancients understood that we still are. We're brushing over the surface. But when I found one of my first patients uh, in massage, I studied massage and martial arts. Studied martial arts. My martial arts teacher taught
I
us
love
to.
this about you.
I'm a black belt in judo and jujitsu. And like I studied martial arts, and we learned to heal people. If you're going to break people, you better learn how to heal them.
Mm,
And so I was doing massage on one of my clients, and all of a sudden, I'm just like overwhelmed. And I come back, and finally, I gave this guy a great massage. He was just like out of it afterwards. I felt really out of it. And then so I went home and I was exhausted. I lay down and I went to bed. Woke up the next day and I had these crazy dreams about
whoa.
flying to China and just getting married. Then I was just like really weird. I was like, okay, first of all, I've never been to China. Second of all, I haven't gotten married. So the next day, the guy came back and he's like, dude, my back feels phenomenal. And I was like, well, that's wild, man. But I'm going to just tell you, like, that wiped me out too. This is what I saw afterwards. I was like, I saw, um, these images in my dreams about like flying to China and someone just getting married. He was like, he froze up. He froze. He looked at me and he's like, I just flew back from China. My back is all messed up. And I got married the week before I flew to China. And my wife was really upset about me going. And I was just like, might be something to that then.
Yeah. I
and
mean,
he, and this, that for that guy, it was transformative, because he's like, I've never had anything like that happen, man. Are you serious? And I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I saw.
wow. Well, and especially, as a masseuse, it's like you are, I don't even look at massages the same way anymore, because it is an energetic exchange with someone and you are helping to move the energy. That gave me chills. That's so
Right?
crazy. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just like, again, like I was thinking a lot before this conversation too, around like, what was that like unfolding for me, because it took me a really long time. Like, I mean, I'm 41 now, and I feel like I was really lost. Like the beginning of really feeling lost and uncertain was probably my early 30s, because it's like I did all the things, I did all this the education, I got the certifications, I got the master's degree, and here I am just like still so unhappy. And it's just like that was the tipping point for me of like something is not right. Like something, there must be something within me that I need to, like, I was blaming, I had like the victim mentality of like blaming the world for my woes. Like, oh, it's my boss, they suck and they're jerks, or I'm not living in the right place. Like I had all of these stories, but it's like when I started to want to believe in something more, I wanted to start to believe that magic and miracles could happen for me. It was like this unraveling of the onion of, okay, like victim mentality, like we all have our moments. Like, you know, it's not just like, oh, you have it or you don't. It's an energetic level that we're kind of tapping into, like a frequency of frustration or depression. It's also, you know, a mental situation, but, you know, it's like depression, apathy, guilt, shame, all of these lower vibrations is what is kind of the world that I was living in and I was manifesting in my world. And so when I started to do the work, everyone says, what that really is it's starting to, it's going within, it's facing those feelings and coming to terms with, is it an old story? Is it an old wound? Is it a trauma? Like big T trauma, little T trauma? You start to really understand that this energy is holding you into place, into a reality that is just manifesting more of the same patterns and situations. And so once I started to believe in magic, once I started to believe in miracles, and I did my like year of yes, where I didn't care how wacky it, like, yes, meditations, but like sound healing, sound baths, the sensory deprivation tanks. Like I tried it all, no matter how crazy it was. And that is really what helped me peel away these lower vibrations that were living within me.
My teacher, he passed away a couple years ago, but I studied with this amazing teacher. His name was John Fulton, and he ran a intuitive development school in Northern California. And one of the times we were sitting there after class having a discussion, and he looked at me. He's like, "Sean, you do these things because you think that this is going to get you what you want. You're going to manifest everything." He's like, "That's not how I look at this." I was like, "Well, talk to me." You know, he says, "I see it as going down the rabbit hole and peeling an onion." He says, "I like to see where people are creating from. What are you creating? And can you get down to the space and see why you're creating that?" Maybe you are, you know, that's why I felt like I was chasing this career in medicine, and that wasn't mine. And then when I finally realized that, I stepped away from that. I said, you know, I would have been a great doctor, but that wasn't my path. My path is different. And, you know, and now I'm starting to feel like I'm stepping into it. And like the idea, I love this. Like I've been embracing, I ran from things and I embraced it at the same time. While I worked in media for the past 15 years, I also moonlighted as a kids teacher, teaching English to children. And it was always my side hustle that I was trying to push away. But suddenly I realized at one point in time that it was there for a reason. And so I was like, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it in a way that I feel authentic. So I started making these videos with my daughter, and they were so much fun. And we get to use magic in it. I mean, obviously we're using like editing tricks, but like little kids don't know that. Little kids see us do magic. And I had one student that was like, told me a couple weeks ago, one kid looked at me and he's like, "I look forward to your videos." And I said, "Why?" And he says, "Because you do magic and I like magic." And I was like, yes, you do. And that just made me feel awesome and happy, because I was creating something that was authentic to me. And
Yeah.
I did the work. I took the time, but I also was willing to embrace the unknown,
Yes.
embrace the uncertainty of, in life, I had different options. This was stable. This was sure. This feels right. And sometimes you have to go with this, even if it feels scary as hell.
Oh my gosh. I feel that so deeply. And I mean, as you say that, it's like I'm even thinking back to, I mean, this is like more about my sexuality, but it's like the head versus the heart and who you're listening to. Like they should technically, the best part is to be in coherence. But I remember when I was with my boyfriend and I was like very unhappy and we had been together for 6 years. But I had like, and my head was like, you'll get married, you'll have children, you'll have the white picket fence, like all what society had told me. But I couldn't ignore what my heart was saying and telling me. And it was like, no, this woman, young lady, like this woman is meant for, like, it was kind of like you said with your wife, like you knew she was your wife when you first like laid eyes on her, it seemed like. Yeah. I had that feeling of like, this is my I couldn't get married at the time because that's why I didn't want to change my sexuality, because it wasn't legal in the United States. But I was like, this could be a woman that I could spend my life with. And that was my battle for a few months of like, do I listen to my head or my heart? And so that's like my advice to anyone is like the heart and the gut. The heart really is the true master and it won't lead you astray. It might not make it easy. You might have some challenges. Yep. But it's like, even when I turn, my birthday, I reflect a lot, and it's like, man, I just had so much gratitude of like, if I had made the safe choice and what my brain was telling me, my life would be completely different, and I wouldn't be as fulfilled as I am, and so in love, with this human who now is my wife that I was able to marry. It all worked out in the end. But yeah, it's all about the heart and what it's sharing with us.
One of the things that I kind of have taught myself to do and tried to remind myself of is to remember to dance. And not to actually dance, but to dance in life, because dance with there was writing. I love living in Ho Chi Minh City for a couple of reasons. One is the motorcycle culture, and it used to be more fun when there were less cars, but it's still, you can go out and just go. And they have this thing that when I first moved to Vietnam, they have this thing that people do that is an interesting hobby. And it's like, it's an activity. And it was called Di Yao Miao. It means go round, round. And it used to be a date activity, a family activity. Literally all it means is to go out and just drive around. Right. And it's like the traveler with no fixed destination. It's like you pick up a bag and like, I'm going to go on a vacation today. Well, where? I don't know. Let's see. And that willingness to just go, to walk out the door and see what the fates bring. Mm-hmm. This is a powerful, powerful magic. And it's one of the things that I've talked to a couple people that have talked about their flow state. And I think that's like the pop culture's way of talking to be in the magic, and we have different ways to say it, but that seems to be the way people are talking about it now. But I still think it's the same thing. I think it is their description of how you can be in that space where things align. How do you get into your flow state, into your magic state?
That's a good question. I'd say, these days, it's evolved. But these days, what I find to be the most helpful in getting there is going within. So that can be meditation. That can be, I'm a huge fan of active breath work, pranayama, yoga breath work, which, really can activate a lot of creativity for myself. And honestly, it all sounds so easy, but being in nature was something that, and grounding with the earth has actually helped me a ton, because my recent awareness, I guess like work from home culture, you know, post pandemic, it's like I am in this room probably 8 to 10 hours a day, like staring at digital screens. I'm like, it's just like a very digital life. And I had this realization of like, I didn't even touch the earth today. Like I haven't even been outside. So yeah, even just simply taking a walk around the block, and taking a break from whatever I'm immersed in, I find that reinvigorates my flow state. Or if I'm not feeling creative or in the flow, it just kind of brings me back down from like my head into my body.
I love that.
Those are just some. I'm like, I could keep going, but those are just like a few. How about you?
For me, one of the things that you pointed out there, we recently took a trip to Maui, and when I was just sitting on the beach, and I put my hands in sand and just sunk my fingers into the sand, and there was just this release that I was able to have, and I it's hard to explain to people this feeling of just being there. I felt it a couple times. There was one time when I was driving across country with my dad, and I had just moved back from Vietnam in 2003. My parents had moved to different places. They had gotten divorced a couple years before I graduated from college, and they were still all in the same area. But then after I moved to Vietnam, when I came back, everyone was everywhere, and it was okay. But yet I came and stayed with my mom in Dallas for a bit, and I bought a car while I was there. Volkswagen Rabbit convertible. Fun car. I love those. And all of a sudden, my mom left to go back to California. And I was in Dallas. And I was supposed to drive the car across country on my own to head back out to California and up to see my family. And I don't know why. I had traveled around the world. I'd lived around the world. I've done so many wild and crazy things, even at that time. But I felt scared. I felt scared. And I felt scared to do the drive. I felt scared. And I didn't know why. It was this weird fear that I would just fall off the world. I would just, that I was going into the unknown, and I didn't know what to do. And so I called my mom and dad, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And so my dad flew down, and we drove across country together. It took us 2 days to get from Texas out to California. But I remember there was this one spot where we were driving across New Mexico, and a storm hit, a huge thunderstorm hit, and water was pouring into that little car. Because the convertible top did not seal too well. But when the rain broke, it was like heaven. I've never seen something so beautiful in my life. And I looked over at my dad, and my dad looked at me, and we were just speechless. And a couple minutes later, I told him, I was like, "Thank you for being here with me. That was amazing." And I don't know if there was any deeper meaning in that moment or not, but it sure was beautiful. And sometimes fear can lead to that. And so, there have been places that I have been that there has just felt like there's magic there.
Oh and I was going to say, you're like totally reminding me of like and there's like vortexes that exist too in the world that call to us. Oh, that's so cool.
Right. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Joshua Tree, just a few weeks ago, and, I've been like called recently to go to deserts for some reason. So I was in Santa Fe last year, and then earlier this year I went to Sedona, and then I was in Joshua Tree. And I was like, all right, it's just like another desert. And I was very excited to go and grateful. But I was just like, okay, it's like another desert this year. Like, let's go. there was something so magical about that location, besides the UFOs that I saw. But yes, like the moment that I stepped foot in, specifically in Joshua Tree State Park, there was just an energy there that I couldn't explain. And we went into the park at night, and we had a fire, and of course I'm like with my breathwork teacher, who's like this magical being himself, but it was just interesting too to observe how nature interacted with us, as people were singing and sharing stories, and nature actually was reacting to us, and birds would swoop by, like there was like a bobcat that was kind of like in the hill that was like keeping an eye on us. So yeah, I would say even locations have that magical touch. And so if you're even called to like, I want to visit this place that I don't know why I want to go there, there's probably something there that wants to activate within you. So yes,
Right.
and of course, like nature is like the source of magic,
Right.
for sure.
I feel like, and I think like if I can inspire people listening to take something from this, pay attention, pay attention to just stuff. Just at this moment, it started pouring rain outside after I talk about that thunderstorm. And it's like, pay attention to how the universe listens, to how we dance, to how we embrace different things, because there's magic all around us, and it takes on different forms. And sometimes I remember ages ago, I was driving home from what was it? I was driving home, and I was at working at a school, and I had my students in the back, and we were driving home from an event, and it was a rainy day, and we were turning left into where the school was at. I had my other assistant teacher, the other teacher was with me. Suddenly, we see this car flip over into the river, and it just boom, splashed down in the river. So I pulled over real quick, and there was a bunch of people that had already gathered around immediately. And so I ran down into the water and just started pulling this person out.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't pull him out. The car was sinking. It was upside down. And I turned and I said, "Someone give me something to break the window." The guy throws me a golf club. Break the window. And I put my hand inside, and I just pull. Hand grabs mine, and I pull the person. And then guy was okay. He's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you so much." And I was like, I was worried. I had to go, and I was like, "All right, I'm out of here."
Yeah.
And then years later, about 3 years ago, I got this message on Facebook. "Hey, are you Sean Trace, the Sean Trace that rescued a guy from a sinking car a couple, like 15, 20 years ago?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that was a long time ago." The guy's like, "That was me." And he's like, "I've been looking for you ever since that day, man. And I just wanted to say thank you." And I was like, "No, I was just glad that I could be there. Super excited and happy that I could help." There was another time that I was visiting my mom's house, and I just heard screaming. And one of the things that I like about martial arts is that my teachers taught me, when I hear screaming, I run toward the screaming.
That's it. Yeah.
I go. If there's people that need help, you go help. And that was something that's been drilled into me by all of my teachers. So I hear screaming, ran over there, and all my medical training went out the window when I left school. But, I see this lady, and she's screaming, "My ear, my ear." And all of a sudden I look in her ear. I was like, I did what I was taught in school about how to view into the ear canal. There's a bee had flown into this lady's ear. And it was not even a regular bee. It was like a bumblebee. And she's like, "Get it out." And she's screaming. And finally I was like, someone came up and cut tweezers, and I just went and pulled the bee out, and I handed him the tweezers back and walked away. And like in both situations, there was magic. because I was in the right place
Right place,
at the
right time.
right time.
Mm-hmm.
Right place at the right time. If anyone else had have been in that place at that moment with that bee, they might not have walked towards it. They might not have had the training that I had to be able to help.
Mm-hmm.
They might not have been able to help her in time, and they might not have listened to the call, to
Yeah.
listen to the call of adventure, of magic, of whatever it might be. And like you said, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes the
Mm-hmm.
call of magic leads us into the dark, scary places as well. But if we can listen and find that light, shining that little magic wand, illuminating the darkness.
Oh,
I love it at the end of Hogwarts, or at the end of Harry Potter, where they all walk out and they raise their wand after someone dies, and then it just lights this beautiful glow. I feel like there's magic all around us, and if we can recognize it and connect with those that see it as well, it creates this thing. And if we get enough of that thing, it can make our world a better place.
magic, everyone. Yo, and I would also argue that to me, the universe was working through you that day, those days, and you were like the angel. You were an angel to those people that day. So it's like the magic. Like once you work with the magic and the universe, that's where you're led to the right place at the right time. You meet the right person. You have the right conversation. You open the book falls off the shelf. That's all the part of the magic. So, and you're an angel.
Right? I made a post yesterday too about how you have to embrace a little bit of danger too.
Yes,
you have to be a little bit willing to go to a place that might be scary. You might be willing, or you might need to be willing to dive deep and to see what might come. And it might scare you at first, like maybe the universe tells you that you're going to need to move to Madrid. Maybe the universe is going to tell you that this thing that you think is stable is not for you, and that your true path is over here. But you have to be willing to go. Right? Before I moved back to Vietnam, there was a day I had been applying to so many jobs in Los Angeles, and I had a good CV. I had been working with some UFC fighters. I had been working at some of the top, with some top entertainers in Los Angeles, and I just couldn't get anything going. And I sat there, and finally one day, an old friend of mine said, "Hey, why don't you come back to Vietnam? You got a good skill set. You could make some waves over here." And I said, "I don't know about that." And I had this one other job that was still in the works. And I was like, I'm going to try this. And then it fell through. Well, before it fell through, I said, if this falls through, all right, I'll move back to Vietnam. And that terrified me. And I remember I was walking my dog when I got this call. And I was like, all right, I didn't get this gig. I'm going to move back to Vietnam. And I did. And the door started opening. And I met my wife. I had my daughter. And I started to find me. But it took everything falling apart to get there.
Yeah.
And it took me embracing my fears to get there. Have you ever had anything happen like that to you?
Oh my God. Yes. Like very, very timely too, because in the pandemic, so just like, again, like listening to this, like, for me, it's like a voice that I hear sometimes. Yeah. It's very clear. Yeah. And so, it's obviously the pandemic, like the whole world is shutting down. And I had this call to like, you need to become a sound healing practitioner, which, like takes money and time and investment and instruments and things like that. But it was so loud and so clear that I listened and had a lot of free time at the time. So did this sound healing stuff. I had gotten laid off from my job in the agency world. And so I was just doing donation-based sound healings over Zoom, mostly with like friends or like friends of friends. So it was like a little bit, low risk, not putting myself out there too much. And people were having really great experiences. And so I ended up getting my current job now. And so it's very busy and very demanding. And so I kind of put my crystal singing bowls and my other instruments away. And I was just like, all right, that was fun. That was a fun little hobby. I got this like party trick. And so my boss, when she hired me, I had shared that I was a sound healing practitioner, and she like held on to that for a really long time. And she would be like, Dara, the sound healer. I'm like, okay, like I'm not really, because I'm not practicing. So anyway, fast forward, we launched a huge course earlier this year, and we have, like 5,000 students. So it's like a beautiful, amazing community. And while my boss was shooting one of the course videos, it's about the vagus nerve and how to soothe it. And she was like, and we're going to include a bonus of a sound healing from Dara on our team. And so my friend was like, so I need you to record a sound healing for us. Talk about fear. Talk about, having stories in my mind that I'm not a healer. Like, who am I to do this? I was afraid to be on camera, like not a fan of my voice. So I had a lot of fears to push through, and a lot of belief systems about like, oh, I have to be live with people. I have to like react to the energy. And that's how I play my instruments. So anyway, we released the sound healing, and it was this huge wave. Like, I was so scared. But this huge wave of love and appreciation and acknowledgement from our students that I wasn't expecting. And so,
awesome.
so yeah, it was just like this magical circle of like, what are the odds that like this voice that was like, do this thing, go do this training, kind of came back around, and I was able to use those gifts. Again, like the universe taught me how to do that. It's frequency, at its essence. And that I was able to share that gift and bring it into a community that's already a built-in audience. And that was really open to trying something new. And like a lot of these people had never even heard of sound healing. So still working through some of those beliefs of like, who am I to help help people heal themselves, really. But that was a huge fear that I broke through. And it's just like, to me, that is magic. And to me, the magic is just kind of starting to build. And so, now my bowls are out, and now I'm like making that more of my life again, but I had forgotten about it for a couple of years. So it was cool how it kind of came back around and made an impact.
I love how, like what you're talking about forgetting things and then remembering them. When we were kids, we all embrace magic. We embrace, whether it be something from Disney or something else, you're willing to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I believe in magic, and the monsters in your closet are scary because they're real, and then we get older and we're like, oh, they're not real. Maybe they were real. And you just were perceiving something that you didn't know you were perceiving. And I think that one of the things that I have to try to remember is that it's okay to be a kid again. It's okay to have that zest, to have that wonder, and to believe in magic. And maybe that's what we're talking about tonight. Maybe this whole thing is just about, it's okay to believe in magic.
I love that. Yes, what a beautiful lesson. And, it's like whenever people are kind of working through, like, I want more happiness in my life, I need more joy, a lot of those conversations come back to like, well, what did you love to do as a child? And that was my learning of like, wow, I don't do any of the things that I used to do. The fun, the play. And that is, it gets you into that energy to receive the magic around. So yes, I love that, Sean. I'd listen to this.
Let me ask you this. If you had Aladdin's lamp, what would you wish for? 3 wishes.
Oh, 3 wishes with Aladdin's lamp. Oh my gosh. Well, I would really love to manifest a farm, which is...
Oh, hell yes.
So that would be great because they're really expensive these days.
Right.
So a farm so that we could, share with the community. And again, like my vision is like healing arts and workshops. So step 1, the farm. Mr. Aladdin. Wish number 2. Oh my gosh, it's like I would say, I would say like, I mean, it would be like very selfish, but just like more, just helping my mom with her health. Just kind of like getting her back to her old self would be like really lovely. She's waiting for this thing called the med bed, which I'm like, I don't know if that's happening, but I would use my wish to get her healthier again so that she could enjoy life a little bit more. And wish number 3, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but I think it's great with this conversation of like helping the world believe, like we'll call it magic in this, but my biggest wish is to help others recognize that we are our own healers and that we can change our lives. And that's just like the wish that I have for the world. Because I know that we're all struggling and we've all been through some collective trauma together most recently. But yeah, just for people to recognize the magic is within.
I think that when we do that and when we make those changes internal, we don't realize it at the time, but that change ripples across the whole world.
Right.
You have the courage to do it and it just goes. Yeah. And then it impacts the people around you who see your courage, who see your bravery, who see your beauty and your truth. And they want to match that. That's what I love.